Hello, everybody. We are here today with TinyShiny, Overwatch, Calling All Heroes, and Collegiate caster, Moxie, caster for Contenders, Calling All Heroes, bunch of stuff, and also coach of Andromeda Astraeus, and SaboTabby DPS for YASS.
Hi.
We are here to do a little bit of a mid-season, mid-year check-in, see what's been going on this year so far in Calling All Heroes, as we've been through 3 tournaments. We have 3 more tournaments before the championship. So we're sort of at kind of the halfway point, roughly here. And what a year it's been for KAW so far. The big, number that everybody's probably looking at or has seen is 63,000, which was the peak viewership for Major 1. Relevant to note that tournament had some pretty good drops, specifically a Venture skin, which definitely helped. Can't forget that in terms of contributing to the viewership, but a really smashing success this year for Calling All Heroes, I would say.
Yeah, especially for a tournament that's been really building up to create a more visible and inclusive environment. Like if you look at, even if we're trying to compare to other tournaments, which I don't really think Calling All Heroes is something that can be prepared, within the Overwatch community, it's received a ton of support, and especially seeing teams recently like Timeless Ethereal find so much success in OWCS really shows the work that and benefit that Calling All Heroes has brought to this community.
Yeah, we're really, I think, I was looking at KAW's viewership compared to Valorant Game Changers, and it's doing significantly better than Game Changers North America, with way less investment and virtually no large organizations. The one thing that was very stark to me is the drop off in viewership between the majors and the minors was massive. I think minor 1 peaked at maybe 6,000, compared to major 2 at 25,000, something like that. Which does make you wonder, why do we even have the distinctions between the two? Moxie, I'm curious, what do you make of the viewership, the huge viewership discrepancies between the two types of tournaments?
But I think part of it is definitely influenced with the drops, right? The miners don't have the drops, and as a result, there isn't as much of a marketing campaign behind it and a push for you to go watch it. So a lot of the time when people come to me, they don't actually realize that a minor already went through. I find that I always invest time into figuring out when the minors are going on, because either my team is playing in it, which means that I know the date and I have to prepare for it, or I'm interested in seeing what other teams are running to sort of get a scouting ahead of the majors coming up. I think that was really one of the standout points for the first minor that we had this year, given the fact that we saw a huge meta shift going through. But a lot of the time, the people who were watching were people like me, who were just investing time into figuring out where the meta was moving to so they could prepare more for the major, as opposed to watching for the enjoyment and support of the minor itself, which is a very big shame, because I find that a lot of the teams who participate in the minor get broadcast time that they don't in the major.
Yeah, and one other big difference between last year and this year is that last year the 3 minors all had 3 different tournament organizers. 2 of them being Overwatch League teams who sort of did a lot of the marketing and promotion for it. Whereas this year, it looks like at least the first 2 minors are both being operated by Esports U, who does CECC, right? That collegiate tournament. And I'm wondering, is that, if any of you know, is that just who they've picked to do all of the minors, or why kind of are they not doing the sort of rotating tournament organizers?
I wonder if part of it is because the rotation of tournament organizers have mostly been for Face-It tournaments. So Face-It tournaments are probably getting a lot of the organizers' times, because there's the team that we have, the team that I coach for our Calling All Heroes team. We have bunches of other different teams, we have an OWCS team, a Face-It team, and all of that. And I know that the people who run those also got involved in running some of the Face-It tournaments, and as a result, they were incredibly busy having to put time to organizing the Face-It tournaments, that they just didn't have time to be able to organize other things. And if that's impacting our organization, I'm assuming it would have the same level of impact in other organizations, plus the fact that there's no Overwatch League teams to immediately say like, oh, this is probably one of those umbrella organizations that would be very good as a figurehead for the such minor organizations.
Mm. Yeah, especially with Esports U has so much experience running tournaments for so many different leagues and organizations. I think it made sense for them to kind of have the ones that they do. And I think it's also simpler than having to jump around and then explain it to a new organizer every single time, having one that's on top of it and able to produce these results with a ton of experience behind it too. It's very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I want to talk about another trend that has kind of been the case this year. That is, I think we're seeing more European players in tournaments this year than last year. Part of that is because of your team, Rachel, but not all of
Yeah.
it. Yeah, oh yeah, indeed. But to give you like an example here, right? I compared 2023 Major 2, you had 15 EMEA players. This year, Major 2, 21. So, Rachel, like, how do you think we can kind of continue this growth and continue encouraging wider participation in Calling All Heroes from the European region?
Yeah. Well, to start off last year, they started with the format was different. So the entire tournament would be one weekend. So Friday and Saturday were Swiss, and then was it just Friday? No, I think it was Friday and Saturday was Swiss, and then Sunday was playoffs. And they were all cramming all into one weekend, and it was brutal for EU players. It was brutal. Like a lot of us would try participating, but then it'd be, we'd start playing at in the UK, we'd start playing at like 9, 10 p.m. and we wouldn't be done until like 4:30 in the morning, 5 a.m. And of course, for people in France and further east into for example, I have a Romanian teammate who's on plus, 2 hours ahead of me. So that was your night just gone. So you were having to stay up extremely late. And I think it killed a lot of EU a lot of EU enjoyment and participation, and you saw it like drop off from the start of last year, as you say, into like Major 2 and on. But when they switched formats into doing the 2 weekend thing, greatly helped. That's definitely starting to claw back. But also I'm not really sure how to further increase EU participation going onwards because we are the only all EU team uh that plays, I think, at all, let alone like just, top eight. So it's because like all of the sort of community has been built around NA. Every EU player is basically the one or two person token on the team for the most part. Because they're having to fit into an already established region and culture. So I'm not really sure how EU participation grows really without actually Blizzard and the tournament organizers investing in EU as a tournament to region in of itself.
Do you think there's enough talent or potential talent to like sustain a full EU region in Calling All Heroes at the moment?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's so many people that I know that don't participate in Calling Heroes at all, but would if it was more accessible times, region, etc. And there's just not really any incentives really for them to really come together as an EU team because it is quite difficult to be programmed in one way of like, okay, we scrim from like 6 to 8 p.m. or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're playing officials, into like 12 p.m. and quite late. There's still that sort of disconnect. And what I think the analogy I always like using is with road infrastructure, how, oh, this road is too busy. Let us do we invest in public transport or do we invest in bigger roads? We invest in bigger road, we fit more cars in, but then that bigger road attracts people, and all of a sudden the road is congested again. And basically, if you build it, they will come. There's a higher population in EU. I think absolutely. Perhaps maybe the first tournament or two might be slightly underpopulated, but as soon as that precedent is set and the infrastructure is there, people will, people will come and people will compete. That's my belief.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just off the top of my head, I can think of some players that I know are sort of around the scene that probably could be playing in Calling All Heroes that aren't, like Power from Ireland, Akufastlier from Germany, that Swiss player Mystery, right? All pretty decent players, right? They could probably fill out these European rosters, but like you said, the time zones are actually horrid. I feel bad for y'all. Another like participation trend that I've noticed this year that I don't even know if you could call it a trend, because I think it's mainly just a couple of high profile people in particular, but in 2023 there were a bunch of quite popular Overwatch streamers and content creators who were women who were playing in Calling All Heroes, and a bunch of them have just kind of not been this year. For a variety of reasons. I'm thinking of like Aspen, Kjersti. SK kind of started playing, but it seems like she's kind of moved away from it as the years gone on. Deku, among others, right? I'm wondering, like, obviously there's, each of these people definitely have their own reason for, the decisions they make in terms of participating in competitive Overwatch tournaments, but I'm wondering, like, if there might be, if kind of, potentially trying to rope those people back in might be a one pathway to, like, further growth, because obviously, like, those are some pretty popular streamers. What do you think, Molly?
I think, as you said, Ben, they all kind of had their own reasons for competing or for not competing. And I think that's very true for a lot of the competitive structure in just esports in general. It's very easy to get burned out, and it's very easy to just completely outplay yourself and go beyond what your limits can be. And because there's not really a solid structure of that yet. Like, a lot of these streamers are already playing so much Overwatch in a day, and then having to come back and then compete in another tournament. Like, I can understand how that can become a lot for some people. I love having these familiar faces and seeing them enjoy the Calling All Heroes community with everybody else, but I don't think it's necessarily an issue with Calling All Heroes itself. It's more of the general thing that we do see in esports a lot, where people just can get burned out by the sheer amount of practice and work that is required in order to be at the highest level.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think now, unless, does anybody have any other kind of broad thoughts on this year in terms of, viewership, like structure, promotion format, etc., before we kind of move on to talking about some of the specific teams and their storylines this year?
Just that in regards to sort of popularity of Calling All Heroes, I'm starting to get people are starting to recognize me quite a lot on ladder, just queuing. It's just quite nice, somehow all YASS fans are out there in the wild, when on the mainstream all we've done is got absolutely pooed on. But they're there, so that's good, that's nice. But also in regards to the reduced sort of content creator participation, I think as Calling All Heroes has just gone on, and you definitely feel it this year, just the level of competition has gone up. Like, it's the quality of teams and play. Like, it feels so much harder to try and, just make top 8, let alone like actually like have a deep bracket run. So obviously, as a content creator, you want your content to be, it's quite tiring to be streaming, and then you also be competing, and then you got to be like trying your heart out in these competitions. I can very easily see why people are turned off from being a content creator. You either, I think, with the level of playing Calling Heroes now, I think you really just have to focus on either content creation and not really participate, or if you want to do well, or go all in on the competition aspect. I don't think you can really do both.
Interesting. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. So let's see, which team should we talk about first? Okay, so let's start with a team that kind of doesn't really, well, I don't think is going to really exist in the same form moving forward, but has been a really big part of KA this year. So Valentine started the year really strong, winning Major 1, breaking Timeless Ethereal's sort of dynasty. And then they got second in Minor 1, they got third in Major 2, and then what I think was kind of a nail in the coffin maybe for this particular roster is they tried bringing in 2 Korean players, Petals and Taro, for OWCS Stage 3, and they don't make top 16, and then everybody on the team starts posting LFT, and it seems like, at least, it seems like perhaps that Valentine, in the form that we had grown to see it, maybe doesn't really exist anymore. So, Moxie, what do you think kind of caused Valentine to perhaps regress over the year? If you think regression is even the right word to describe it, what do you think about that?
I think a part of it is just expectation. Like coming into Major 1, there wasn't really any big expectation that this team had already built up. And then when they do the thing that no other team had been able to do, which is topple Timeless Ethereal for the first time that we'd ever seen in the Colonial Hero circuit, suddenly there was this big expectation and this huge weight on their shoulders that they had to be able to keep it up. And I think then, like, not being able to hit that same level of expectation in the next competition meant that when they took that hit of falling from first to second, because there was suddenly that expectation, it was probably a lot easier to fall into frustration because you know that you're better than that. And then that becomes this horrible vicious cycle of where you're trying to do better, but because you're doing more, a lot of the time in Overwatch, and something that we tell like our players is the answer to wanting, like, to having an issue isn't to do more because that's just going to exacerbate the problem. It's actually to do less, because if you try and do more and it just keeps going wrong and you keep trying to force the solution, it's only going to make you feel worse when things just don't keep going right, and then you're going to get frustrated at yourself and potentially frustrated at your team. So I think when they took that first hit of falling from first to second, and then even further, the fact that they didn't manage to get to the grand finals in the last major, even though it was a really close series, it really went like down to the wire, 5 minutes for them to be able to take Shambali, and unfortunately just not being able to push all the way through B. That had to have been a bubbling point of frustration because they got so quickly through A, and then everything just started going horribly wrong on B, and you could sort of see them just continue to try and force this issue and find a solution by doing more and more and more, like more flanks, more aggressive plays, more ultimates. And it just meant that they burned themselves out of time, and they probably burnt through themselves in terms of mentality as well, which is really unfortunate because the killer of great teams a lot of the time isn't the matches that you play, it's what goes on outside of the matches, when you're waiting, when you're scrimming, when you're practicing, when you're building up to these tournaments.
Yeah, and like Molly, do you think that, because one of my ideas is that I think it might kind of be time for Kindred and Mari to maybe separate and kind of try and be solo tanks, because I think it kind of reminds me of a little bit of like Super and Smurf back in the day, only in the sense of like that you know, they're sort of capping each other's playtime, and I think that like they're both really good, and I think it seems to me that the best way for them both to maybe improve and to kind of reach the potential that they've demonstrated is to take on like that solo tank workload. Molly, do you think that I mean, do you think I'm onto something with that, or am I full of shit?
I'll start by just saying I've said this from the very beginning. As soon as Mari and Kindred are announced on the same roster, it is simply unfair to have two of the best tanks in the entire tournament on the same team. Each of them have their own strengths, but both are perfectly capable of being a solo tank. They can very well be that one tank for a team. They just don't. They just pack that talent behind Valentine's roster. And honestly, that has been a good reason for their success. Even neither of them have like really bad weaknesses we're concerned about. They have strong points that just counter each other. And it really worked out for the Valentine roster. Splitting playtime, and if anything, it forces them to compete with each other if they were trying to get more playtime in the first place. But having a bit of an idea of what those two players are going for, they just want to win. They want to find a way to win, and if one of them is the better way to do it, they're okay with making that swap. And both are incredibly strong in their own right. So if for some reason they were to be on different teams, I would love to see them go against each other. That would be awesome. But it's also, I don't think it hinders either of them to be on that same roster, as they both can accomplish great things in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I think very much players that like their hero pools synergize like remarkably well, almost to like a freakish extent. Like basically everything Kindred is kind of can't play, Mari can play. I guess the only like I don't know if either of them really has like a Winston, but
yeah, they both do.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen the Kindred and the Mari Winston
good Winstons
come for. Yeah, okay. The one thing that sort of separated them was that Kindred a lot of the time would play the Ramatra, but then even when we saw Valentine play in the last major, Mari was actually flexing onto the Ramatra points too. So it seems like even the tanks that they couldn't play previously, they've actually both individually been working on to be able to, since we're in a meta now where the composition you start the round of is probably not going to be the same composition you end with. I think like Mari just being the dive tank and Kindred being the brawl tank was simply just not an option for Valentine anymore. So both of them have just been individually teching to be able to cover up those composition swaps.
Yeah. Another thing I think that has kind of affected them is, and Wisps actually, I managed to catch Wisps saying this when I was watching OC's stream. Wisps was like, I'm on the team, they get first and second, I leave, they get third. And I think, like, I don't think Kuna has played necessarily, like, poorly, but I think that's definitely been like I definitely noticed a difference in their play with Wisps versus without them, especially on those like Widow maps, like that. Yeah, those like Wisps Senna Widow duels, like Kuna's just so
I can sort of like provide a little bit of clarity on that one too, because our teams like matched up against Valentine's a whole bunch, and when we knew that was on the roster, it was essentially just us being like, we have to ban out the Widow maps. We can't go to Widowmaker maps, and it allowed Valentine this advantage of being able to sort of force your hand. Even when you were the team that got to pick the map, you still had to blank out some of your map choices and push you and funneled you into options that Valentine would better be able to prepare for if they understand that having Wisp as a name on their roster means that you're not going to go for places like Circuit or Junkertown or Ilios.
Yeah, Wisp is just insane. I mean, Wisp was even like hitting shots against Sugar Free when Avidity was playing Toronto Defiant. Like, even in that.
Well, we were going up against Wisp, it wasn't a case of we're going to win the Widow duel. We went for the Wrecking Ball play of just jump on the Widowmaker so that the Widow has to swap.
Yeah.
That was our strategy, and it did work somewhat. But like the fact that we had to use that as a strategy was a huge strength to Valentine before you even get into the match.
Yeah, I also think, I remember Wicca posted that she was kind of, I don't know if she said she was like retiring or was kind of just bored or boomed of playing main support. I know I've seen her in people's Twitch chats kind of sort of complaining about being stuck in Lucio jail. I think she very much prefers being on Brig or Mercy. Yeah. Molly, aren't you like a DPS player?
Oh no, I used to be a support player, and I had to play Lucio, and I'm like, Lucio's my worst support. I just want to play Baptiste. But no, we already had a Bat player. You're gonna learn Lucio. Fine.
I mean, it's a good time to be a support main now. You get to play Bap early.
Very true. This is why I play Tracer, though. No more support jail. No more Lucio.
Yeah, Lucio is still a thing. Like every single time we're in scrims, all of my main supports are like, "Do I have to play Lucio?" I'm like, "Yeah, you have to play Lucio." Because even if like you could play the Ana, it used to be that your main support would be able to escape Lucio jail and get to go into the Brigida, which some would argue not much better. But now it's still Ana Lucio is the main pairing, especially if you're running dive. We're seeing it more and more and more, which means that for main supports, it's just not that fun because you can't even go for the aggressive main support style of like Lucio just inting aggressively looking for those one-on-ones because in terms of micro decision making, it's just not for the better of the team's health.
You get that damage buff and you can't even use it.
True.
Well, I mean, to be honest, it just sounds like your team's actually in meta jail rather than Lucio jail. But, you know, what would I know?
Well, your team is sort of to quote to quote somebody, you're sort of unburdened by what has been and free to explore what can be. And we will definitely be getting to YASS later because I think there's a lot to talk about with that team. I want to move on to I want to talk about YFP Pixies and Supershy Ivy kind of in one segment because they're not like the same team. They have like one or two players in common, but I think Supershy Ivy kind of replaced YFP Pixies in the top three pretty obviously, and obviously there is some roster overlap. So I want to first talk about let me pose this question first. Do you think that YFP Pixies as a sort of project was a failure or a success from the organization's perspective?
I think it was a success, maybe not from the organization's perspective, but definitely from the players. The fact that it got that level of resources and support, not just from the organization, but also from the people that they brought in, right? The fact that they managed to get Jake as a coach to be able to impart that knowledge meant that for all of those players who are on the original roster, even if they go to different teams, they then take that knowledge and further it into the community, which means that more and more and more people are going to be able to get that exposure to tier 1 experience, and it's going to make their teams individually much stronger. So even if like the original roster breaks up and moves on to different places, it's only going to do better for the community as a whole because that knowledge is going to mean that everyone's level of performance is going to get pushed up, which I think returns to the point that Rachel actually brought up about the fact that it feels like the Calling All Heroes circuit is getting much stronger in terms of performance from every single team.
Yeah. What do you think, Molly, Rachel? Do you agree with Moxie?
I mean, if you're looking at it from a short-term perspective, I guess you could say that there was some successes, but I think the team as a whole was sort of built to fail in terms of like roster construction. If you just looked at like the DPS line, having like 4 DPS players, I mean, all 4 of them deserve starting spots. I mean, that was just like a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. Just one person not being happy that they're not getting playtime. Because if you have 4 DPS players, even if you have like, oh, we have a specialist map for this player, you know, to swap things out. In general, I think you're going to end up with someone really not happy. And it's just going to lead to internal conflicts. I mean, in the Major 1, we almost beat them in Swiss. And I think in part it was because there was some friction within the team. I think if SK wasn't there, and I mean SK was a really good stabilizer for that team for like their mood, but like we helped them. They disrespected us, which to be fair, I would too. We're a bit of a funny team. But you know, they had like Par doing Par things on Reaper. But then all of a sudden
that game.
But all of a sudden we take a map from them on King's Row. It's first to 2. We go to Gibraltar and we hold them at the end of B. They don't even get past B. And all we have to do, like we honestly choked that. But also I think SK, if you go back and watch the VOD, SK was a really good stabilizing thing for that team. But that team they were like really not happy with each other. Like they were like upset at par for trolling. They were generally frustrated that they were losing to a team that they thought were shitters. But so yeah. And I'm not surprised, honestly, that they imploded after, what was it, one tournament?
2. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if I would be like, I don't know the order of sort of operations in terms of like, did the org kind of decide to pull out and then the team disbanded, or did the org decide to pull out because the team was disbanding and they didn't really want to like pick up another roster? I know there were rumors that YFP was going to sign what was then Green Fortnite, which was already previously Timeless Ethereal, which is now Timeless Ethereal again. Just for the record, I'm just going to call that team Timeless Ethereal for the whole of this episode, because if I switch back and forth between the different names they've had the last couple months, it's going to get really confusing really quickly. But I don't know if that was like ever actually a thing that was considered, or if it was just kind of people spreading misinformation on the internet. But so I don't know what necessarily happened behind the scenes in terms of YFP deciding to pull out of Calling All Heroes. But I think like the fact that they got 4th in Minor 1 was like not great. Like, if you're the only team that's actually getting paid, you should, I mean, ideally you should be winning, but at least you should be getting like top 2 or 3. So I imagine that probably wasn't like really a great result for them. And obviously, like when I spoke to Senna for the article I wrote, she talked about kind of some of these tensions and conflicts in terms of like who was making the decisions as to who should start. And, you know, I don't really want to turn us into a drama channel, but like, you know, there were definitely, you know, decisions that were kind of questionable in that regard. And obviously, like, you can't like necessarily binarily judge it as like success or failure. I kind of, you know, I'm kind of bringing that framing to be a little bit provocative, but it's definitely an interesting chapter in this year. And then part of that roster kind of reforms as Supershy Ivy and does better than they had previously, building a roster that was probably the best attempt by anybody to like compete with Timeless Ethereal. Do any of you know who was that roster built by Supershy, or was it kind of a roster that Supershy that was sort of built by the players and then they sort of became part of Supershy? Nope, no one.
I'm not sure about that one.
No clue.
All right, fair enough. Just thought I'd ask. But the player from Supershy Ivy that I think is like has been the real revelation, both in Calling All Heroes and also I think she's beginning to be recognized as like genuinely one of. I saw somebody say in Commander X's Twitch chat that Hitori was the best German Winston, and I think that is becoming an increasingly more common opinion. So let's just, do we want to just do like a couple minutes of just talking about how good Hitori is? Is that?
I mean, I am
Hitori
okay
fan
with
club.
talking about
Let's
how
do
good
it.
Hitori is, because so I would say that like the tank that I've always seen Hitori as representing hasn't really been Winston, it's been Sigma.
Yep.
Like Hitori was
Really?
a standout Sigma back in the Super Shy Tier 2 days, and I would always look at Hitori POV to get a good reading on like the positioning that a Sigma should have, the timing that a Sigma should have in terms of like how long you stay in the fight, how long you should be trying to play for your team, but also creating more space to take away from the other side. And I think like it's really good to see that Hitori's been able to move away from that sort of stamp of just being known for Sigma and find a lot of strength into the dive, because that for me signals a really solid tank player. The fact that you can move with the times, because back then it was just Sigma versus Maga. Are you a Maga team? Are you a Sigma team? So it worked really well for Hitori because you could just put on the Sigma. But now that we're moving away from the Maga and away from the Sigma and towards the dive, like having a really good Winston or a Diva player is really important. And I would argue having a Winston player is more important than having a Diva player. So the fact that we can already start to like see those opinions forming is really strong.
I think it's really interesting that you characterize Hitori that way, because my kind of view of her had always been the opposite, because I remember her like playing Winston for Team Germany and then kind of, oh, she can play Sigma? What? This is cool. I don't know like what she played primarily in like Overwatch 1, but the fact that I'm here saying like she's like one of the best Winstons in EU, and then you're here saying like she's like, you know, might be the best Sigma in Calling All Heroes, like the fact that both of those things can be true is actually like a real testament. Like I think, and you know, if any of you disagree with this, like definitely say so, because I don't want this to turn into like the Hitori fan club completely, even though that would be justified. Like I think she has like tier 1 potential, like her and both in, I think obviously in Calling All Heroes, but like just in EU Overwatch in general, I think she like really could be the next big thing, and I think a lot of people are starting to realize that.
It's really good for the growth as well, because like we were talking about the fact that Valentine had like 2 of the best tanks locked behind their roster. Something that we saw going through a lot of like different iterations of Calling All Heroes is that there was sort of the tank players, right? The staple players that all of the big teams would try and grab away, and we only really had 4 main tank players. So the fact that we're already starting to see new talent getting to come through and widen out the circle of big good tank players is really good for not just Super Shy's roster, but also for the longevity of Calling All Heroes as a whole, because I know some players just refuse to join teams, refuse to join rosters that didn't have the big tank players, because they knew that if you went up against the likes of like Avery or Sniper or Soil, you didn't stand a chance. Like you could have the better DPS, you could have the better supports, but if you didn't have the better tank, because we were in a meta which was so heavily focused around tank just being super big boss and the decider of all of the team fights, it just was absolutely pointless to put all of your hours into a team that's just going to lose.
Yeah, when you say big 4 tank players, I'm curious, like who are you referring? Who are those 4?
Sniper, Soil, Avery, and Kindred.
Interesting. Okay.
No Mari in there.
No, because Mari was seen as a Doomfist.
Really?
Like Mari was known for Doomfist and then started picking up the Winston. But if you remember the last major back in 2023 December, Mari was the Doomfist.
Very true.
Oh,
she would only play the Doomfist.
She was on like Kunoichi at one point, right?
A while back.
It's so hard to remember.
Hard for me with Mari. I think she's just so flexible. Like the first time I saw her, she was just dominating on JQ, pulled out the Ramatra, did incredible on that, hit a bit of a stutter, played Doomfist for a while. That was a phase, I hope. And now
Doomfist was really good.
It was
was
good.
also very, very
in
good.
my head, I think of her as like a diva player. Like that's the hero I think of when I think of her.
But that's Mari though, because she's so good at so many different tank heroes. You can't, like, everyone knows her for something different because she can just pull it out. And
she's the jack of all trades.
Literally.
She's the Swiss Army knife of Calling All Hero tanks.
Yeah.
Okay, don't put her on Wrecking Ball, okay? All right.
Yeah, except that one.
That is all YASS territory.
I have an infamous clip. It's one of my favorites. Sorry to like glaze myself, but it was in like Althea Trailblazers, which was like a mini sort of Calling All Heroes equivalent in EU, and I beat Senna and Mari, who came at me as a ball tracer, and I was just a tracer alone, and I beat them in the 1v2. So you know.
Understood. That's the one hero that Mari will never be allowed to touch.
Also, before we move away from Hitori, I just want to say, fit it in, that as someone that actually plays in the server against these tank players, Hitori is by far the scariest to be in a server against. Like the amount of pressure you feel just coming from her is like beyond any other like Calling All Heroes tank. Like you can tell she has that experience, that killer's instinct. She just knows where she needs to be, plays her limits so much better than anyone else I've played against the Calling All Heroes. Like
the fact that she's like
terrifying.
A true hyperflex, like there's no hero that I'm like, oh yeah, like I don't want to see her on that. Like I'm not that all of her heroes are necessarily like elite level, right? Like I don't, she's not Hanbin on Zarya, she's not, Strider or Junbin on Ball, But like if I see Hitori roll out a Wrecking Ball, I'm like, okay, yeah, like I this isn't stupid. I trust this. She actually reminds me of to compare to another EU tank player. She actually reminds me of Chase in that sense, in kind of a hero pool sense, and also honestly, and also Infected. In that sort of like, there's no pick where I'm like, yeah, this like, oh god, why are they on this hero? Which I think it contributes to what you're saying about her being so just intimidating. Because even like, you know, Sawhill, Sniper, Kindred, Mari, like Avery, you know, they all have holes in their hero pool, right? Like, you know, I don't know how intimidated I am by like Sawhill on, you know, Wrecking Ball, or maybe like Doomfist. You know, I don't think Sniper really plays Reinhardt. Actually, bad example, but I think you get the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is worth. I know at SK was like on Supershy Ivy. I don't think she played. We'll kind of see what happens moving forward throughout the year. I think I speak for the entire community when I say that like more SK is generally always a good thing. This is, I'd say we are a pro SK organization, but definitely like should be on the lookout for like what comes next from her moving into the rest of the year. So next up, we should talk Timeless. So kind of stumbling in the first tournament, which I think in retrospect, like that tournament was a lot of Mauga, and I think they maybe didn't really have a great read on that. And then they come back and get really mad and then just dominate the next two tournaments. And also get top 8 in OWCS NA. All this time they've kind of been, I think, figuring out their, like, who they want their permanent flex support to be. They played with Z at some point. They played with Anyun at some point. Now they have Scuffed. Another thing of like, we're not necessarily sure like who they're going to have for the next Calling All Heroes tournament. They were playing with Scuffed and OWCS. What do you think? So here's the question I want to pose. What do you think is like, if there's anything that's going to stop this team from just winning everything for the rest of the year, what could it be? Like you look at this team, what is their weakness?
Mauga.
Yeah. I think it's just if meta changes is the thing, because like they've gone away. They had like that question posed that every single team, when you win everything, gets posed. What do you do? How do you react when you lose something? Does it either just fully affect you and you bow out, or do you go away and work and improve and then come back and absolutely smash the entire competition? And that's exactly what Timeless Ethereal have done, and huge props to them. They've done it in a really good way. Like the pickup of Scuffed, I was gonna say Scuffed was one of my favorite supports to watch in the last major. I still remember that sleep dart on Zoe's flank barrage. Like Scuffed was the reason that Valentine's didn't make it through, and Supershy did. Scuffed and Velvet were those two players who carried the entirety of the last two maps of that matchup. So I think it's a really good pickup, and I think it showed that Timeless like understood that this is a really good player who would be able to fit really neatly into that composition. But I think if meta changes and they get put back to square one, where instead of like having all of that time that they've dedicated to being able to figure out the current meta, if they get put on that even playing field as everybody now having that same level of time to learn meta, like that I think is when you're potentially going to see some cracks form, especially if meta starts moving back towards something like either the Mauga or the Orisa.
Timeless, I think, have one of the most versatile rosters within CAW right now. They have, I don't even know, at least 3 DPS players and 3 supports and 2 tanks. That's off the top of my head last time I checked. They have a ton of options, which, as we know, can work either very well or very poorly. For Timeless Ethereal, it has worked incredibly well. And even themselves, every single winning interview that they've had, it has somehow come up that they said, I think it's mostly Senna, that we will win every single game unless Mauga comes back. Like they are just, they have it set in their heads that Mauga is the ultimate evil. That's the one thing that can take them down.
I feel like they're never gonna, like, if they're kind of, I mean, who knows if it's like serious, but if they're like afraid of, surely like you can't be afraid of Mauga if that's your, like, you, like, why set yourself up for failure if that
Exactly.
comes
I mean,
back.
if Mauga comes back, you just play Farah. Is the thing, because Farah was the ultimate counter to Mauga, both in the Sigma and also the Mauga mirror. Like, she's just so strong. So I think for Timeless Ethereal, like the one thing that they could do to cover themselves and give themselves that insurance, which they have done with their roster, right? As TinyShiny pointed out, like they're making sure that they are ready for whatever the patch changes to. They're going to have players who are going to be able to be specialists on those roles, no matter what meta falls into. They need to make sure that they have a Farah specialist. That's the one thing that they really need to do. If they're worried about the Mauga, just book yourself a Farah specialist. Like Zoe would be really strong, I think, for Timeless Ethereal.
I mean,
they did recently add Peace too.
Yeah, Major 2, they were rotating Bun, Peace, and Senna. There's also obviously the like question mark of if they're able to have X10 participate in Calling All Heroes, because she's had some issues with the identity verification, which we don't necessarily need to get into, but like I'm not sure what's happened on that front in the last couple months. But if this team is able to field Senna and X10 at the same time, like that might just genuinely be like GG
to whoever
unfair. They're playing. And that's another question that we're kind of looking forward to as we look into Minor 2 and beyond, is like, what combination of DPS players is this team going to run with? I would expect Bun plus whoever. Is Peace going to stick around? Is Senna going to stick around? Will they get X10? The thing is, though, like, no matter what the answer to those questions is it's still kind of terrifying no matter what. And we could turn into the Senna fan club and the X10 fan club too, because X10 was actually at times single-handedly carrying this team through fights in OWCS North America Stage 3, which we should talk about a little bit. So Rachel, were you able to watch like the NA matches with your time zone, or?
I caught the I didn't really catch much of the group stage, but I caught the actual, like, I've watched the playoffs bracket. And I saw both timeless matches.
Yeah. So how did you think about how they performed in those main event matches?
Honestly, I think it was just a really good sign. If you had told me at the beginning of the year, for example, that they would be top 8 and they would at least take a map in that top 8, but not only that, their players did look like they were competitive. Sure, I think obviously they weren't competitive enough to win a series, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a really good sign of the progress that the Calling All Heroes players have made, how much they've improved. It's nice to see some recognition. Like, even in the maps they were losing, they were still, they weren't getting full help. They were taking points. They had answers to things. The DPS players weren't getting dominated in the duels. And they were fighting back with and winning them. I'm just really happy to see their success, honestly. I wish I could have caught them win some series in the actual like qualifying group stages, because I should go back and maybe take a look at those, because
there was some fear that they wouldn't even make it, because they lost 3-0 to Avidity and then had to beat them again. Well, they 3-0'd them in the rematch, which is really interesting, and I actually wish I'd caught more of their first matchup against Avidity, because I don't know how they lost 3-0 and then came back and kind of dominated the rematch. Maybe they were just not locked in. Not sure. Maybe I only saw a little bit of map 3. Avidity was playing a bit of Wrecking Ball. Maybe that caught them off guard on that map in particular. But I think this has been a trend for Timeless since this roster is kind of solidified around like Minor 2-ish of last year. Has kind of been this core. but really since Halo joined the team, I think is kind of when this core locked in. The trend that I've noticed is like when they lose, they get really angry and then they come back and kind of often destroy whoever, like even when they lost Major 1, right? They won the upper bracket finals and then lost the grand finals. Like I would actually imagine, obviously like this is just a hypothetical, if they had lost the upper bracket final of Major 1 and then had to come back through lower finals into grand finals, I think it's probably more likely they would have won that just through the buff of timeless angry.
I would agree with you, definitely. I think like that was the problem. And that was actually a narrative that we had like for the previous days of Calling All Heroes, like the fact that Timeless were just doing it entirely uncontested by everybody. We were worried that there was going to be like that stagnation, because if you're the best, there's no motivation to get better. But now that you had like competition at the beginning of the year and the fact that Valentine's came and took away your title, it meant that they had to evolve, they had to improve. And I think like they saw the evolvement, they saw the improvements that they were able to make when pushed, and saw that it made them better as a team. And as a result, they just got more accustomed to be able to take those losses and shape it into something that, while it was a negative at the time, in the long run would become this major positive for the team.
Like the saying, you learn more from losing than you do for winning. Like Timeless takes that to a whole new level. Like it's actually scary how quickly they can make those turnarounds. Like even if they do lose, and yeah, that is frustrating, like they're immediately reviewing it. They're figuring out every single thing that they could do better. And that's where you can see those big turnarounds like they did with Avidity. Like even though I didn't see what happened in that game, I can only assume, just knowing their habits and how dedicated this team is to finding success.
I mean, you got to see it firsthand in the last major, because the matchup of grand finals against Supershy won the first two maps. And then Timeless turned around and said, we're not going to take this lying down. And they improved. And it was like we were watching a different team entirely after to map 3.
Yep.
Yeah, so really it's that sort of ability to just flip a switch. And this is going to sound so dramatic, but the word almost feels like bloodthirsty. Like they just get like filled with murderous rage.
I think it's stubbornness. It's
honestly,
it's like max stat stubbornness is what they have. Like when they understand and when they have that harsh reality that goes like, okay, we actually could lose this, it forces them to kick up a notch. Like some teams are able to. I mean, it's such a horrible stereotypical saying, like pressure builds diamonds and all of that, but like it really does feel like some teams, including Timeless, just do better when they're under that pressure that forces them to kick it up again.
Yeah, very, very scary. And I think we'll continue, honestly, especially like if it kind of that Valentine core disperses, like I would not be surprised, and especially after also having that OWCS kind of matches under their belt, I would not be surprised if they kind of tear through. I honestly would not be surprised if they don't drop a map in Minor 2. Like I think that should honestly be their goal. I think like perfection should be their goal, as dramatic as that sounds. But if there's one team that's gonna fuck up your chances at being perfect by throwing something your way that you're not expecting, Rachel, it's your team. So I think especially because like just the way that the bracket's been structured, I feel like you guys don't get on broadcast a ton. So SaboTabby, if you could just tell us like what are the players of YASS's gimmicks? Like who are your, who are the one tricks, who are the hyperflexes? Like just give us, tell us a bit about your teammates.
Okay. I hate them all, and I'm stuck with them.
Yeah, but
get me out. No, no, I love all of them. They're all wonderful people. So, start with myself. I think that'll just be an easy place to start. I'm definitely I'm the most flexible in the DPS line.
You're the cat,
I don't think
basically.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I actually have a very similar hero pool to Ken.
There you go.
So I mostly play Tracer just because we're playing a lot of Bull. Tracer and Bull work together really well. Tracer's also my favorite character, but Sashimi hasn't been very good recently. Maybe with the health changes, I could start pulling him out again. But Hanzo's my second best hero. I could play any DPS for the team except really Mei or Sin. Because I'm a fucking moron and I can't put my walls in the correct places and I overthink them. Same with the teleports. I don't know. Those heroes do not click for me.
So you're a fake EU DPS player, is what you're saying, since you can't play Mei.
Yeah, again, I am the anti-EU DPS. I'm a Korea boo. Dive all the way.
Korea's actually started running Mei with dive, so
NA and EU are running Mei with dive.
No, Korea's been on some strange compositions lately. Being said, the Wrecking Ball has been seeing a lot of play in Korea, so I'm excited to see, Rachel, what your team gets to do with that.
Yeah, but also in the DPS line we have Afi. She's French, because we're a team. She's like a projectile player, very sort of she plays Echo, Farah. She has a really good Mei. See, that's why I don't need to be good at Mei. She's good at Mei. She's like really smart with cooldowns and stuff. She's not like that aggressive of a player, but like her Mei, I could gush how good she is at placing blizzards and walls.
So she's basically
just
Nico,
really smart.
is what you're saying. No, I'm kidding. That's unfair.
She's a female Kaiser. You know. Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Are you okay with these like comparisons, by the way? Because I find it to be a good way to kind of get people acquainted with players that they might not otherwise be super familiar with. It's like, oh yeah, here's who they're. Okay, cool.
And finally, running up the DPS line, quite infamously, I think everyone loves it when we bring them out. It's the Dong. Everyone loves the Dong. We always make a joke about how we're inserting the Dong. It's time. We love them. We adore them. They bring the sweetness to the DPS line. So they are a Torb junk 2 trick, mostly Torb, but they will play the junk if the Torb doesn't work. So sometimes, when the Come as an ultimate doesn't work for the Dong, you can just focus on the fact that they're junk instead.
Why am I the only one laughing at that? Oh, it's right, because you two are like professionals. That's why.
No, you should see it. When CB and I were getting ready to cast YASS, she could not stop laughing. She's like, I'm gonna have so much fun with this, and I'm just thinking in my head, we are both gonna get fired and we're never coming back.
See, we were playing against YASS, and I was like, if Dom comes onto the roster, they're gonna ask for Torbjorn Torboff, and we're gonna have to deal with it.
It's okay. You know,
time to hammer off with the Dong.
That was the only thing we won out of that streamed game versus YFP.
I mean, really, that's the moral. I mean, that's the moral victory.
Absolutely. It just proves how much of an expert the Dong is at hammering. Anyway, support line. We have a couple of a very interesting support lines. So we've got Linda, Adrenalinda, which is a fantastic name. She's very clever for it.
Love it.
She's Romanian, and she's like our primary sort of shot caller. Like her comms are excellent. She's like, I don't really need to call her a main or flex support player because she's just our support player. Is the way I put it.
I've mostly seen her play Ana, I feel like. But...
Yeah, we played a lot of Ana with her, but if Ana's not good, then she'll be on like Lucio or Brig. She's just she's very flexible. She's great. Really good nades. And never tilts. Literally never tilts. I've never heard her upset in her life. Then we have Macy. Macy's really funny because he is Danish. And she's always got like rooting for Danish players and everything. But also she has never played Overwatch 1. It's actually crazy to me. Apparently she played the last like 2 or 3 months of Overwatch 1.
So
she doesn't remember it. Well, she did, but she didn't actually like commit much.
I see. Okay, gotcha.
She dabbled. She like had dabbled very lightly in it because of because she heard Overwatch 2 was coming out and she wanted to try it, and she said she was sick of battle royales. And then all of a sudden she's just like she's been playing for like a year, and all of a sudden she's year and a half, and oh look at that, she's peaked like top 30 on the ladder, and she's uh was like she got like GM3 like super fast after the season 9 rank reset. So she was and she's like a she's like skewed. That's a good way of putting it. Skewed on LA Gladiators. How skewed would be like the Brig player,
Mm.
but would also play flex support with Shu. She's kind of that hero pool, so she plays Kiri, uh, Kiri Brig, Bat. Um, she's on her Juno arc right now, so
Mm.
I will see if she brings that out. But we don't really like have any concrete plans or anything. And finally, we've got Noya. Um, I love Noya. I've known him for ages. I met him through UK Collegiate, actually,
Mm.
which is far too impressive a name for how dog shit that scene is. But but I love him. I love him so much. He's a big Lucio fan. Always wants to go to Lijiang Tower because he wants to boot people off. Uh but he also does play Brig and Zen. So he's like a more traditional sort of main support sort of player who like will play the Zen with like a bat.
Hmm. And
Um,
then you have about 6 Wrecking Ball players, right?
yeah, we have like a million of those. No, we currently have two. We've got
A
Crash
lot.
Out Devil, who used to go by Ball and Danny. Um, but she's like hardball one trick. She's lovely. She's really nice. She has a habit of just using Minefield whenever. She'll just like fight will be lost and she'll be like just go in and use mines, roll out. Somehow it gets value half the time. I don't understand it. But but she does have a bit of a problem sometimes with her mental. And so I genuinely don't know how she does this, how she did it. But she was just like, I have a ball player that's better than me. Let me go and bring her in and we will and I'll be like the backup in case like she's not around. So like we don't have to there's not too much pressure on me. And so we bring in Kanata. And Kanata's never played on a team before, ever, even though she's been around since the start of Overwatch 1. Works a day job, somehow has like 8 different accounts in top 50. I swear she's insane. She's so good. Um, but she's not just a ball one trick. Her ball is her best hero, but she can play Zarya, she can play Queen, she can play Diva. So she's been like a real good addition. Um, and that's the team.
Yeah.
What else do you want to know? Because I assume we're talking about future sort of maybe potential or how we fucked things up badly in last tournaments. Where do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have kind of been up and down this year. Um, made top 8, didn't make top 8, like here and there with tournaments. What I know, Moxie, you mentioned before we started recording that you think ball might be kind of coming back into the meta in a big way. Is that something that you have been seeing in your scrims, or is that something that you've been noticing, Rachel?
Um, I'll be honest. We don't really scrim.
Right. Right, because
We
you're right, because all yeah, okay, right, yeah.
I was gonna say, oh yes, like
Yeah.
entire thing was that
Right.
they didn't
We don't
scrim.
You really
So
are
it's
just
nice to know
the
that oh yes, they're just like
counterparts of
carrying it first.
It's kind of funny how like maybe we fit in like between 1 and 3 scrims the week before like calling all heroes, but apart from that, we never scrim. It's sometimes we'll go into a tournament with 0 scrims. It's just how it is. We everyone's got busy schedules, busy lives.
right.
So if we can scrim before a tournament, we do try. Like we're not like we haven't gone through scrim rehab and we're not trying to relapse into scrims. Like we do dabble in scrims.
Scrim rehab.
So but no, I can't speak to how strong ball is in scrims. All I've just seen is there's been quite a few more ball players on ladder. I've duoed with my ball player. With Kanata, she's doing really well on the hero. Ball seems pretty good. But yeah. Yeah, we do just show up to tournaments, make top 8 with no scrims. And then it kind of bites us in the ass anyway, because then we have no experience to deal with when things go wrong. But that's how it is.
Yeah, you know.
When did you start noticing a spike up in Wrecking Ball players on ladder? Because Korea started running a lot of Wrecking Ball in this current present OWCS stage, and in fact, it's turned into a lot of dive maps just becoming Wrecking Ball mirrors, especially Nepal. On Shrine, it's literally just Wrecking Ball versus Wrecking Ball on that map every single time.
It's definitely been the new season. I don't know what it is about the new season that's really done it. If I could say how I think the theory has gone down, it's the fact that while perhaps Winston is still very good at and better than Diva at enabling his team to dive with Bubble. Bubble is still an insane cooldown. Obviously, just Diva existing, and if the Winston player makes one mistake, the Diva can just decide that Winston isn't playing the game for like 30 seconds until they come back from spawn. So the ball has like better enabling power than a Diva because Pile Drive with the buffs is kind of insane. They just kind of like it doesn't feel like they like jump up and down higher. It feels like they float there for like 5 seconds. It's kind of crazy, really. Um, but so the slam is really good at enabling, and then the ball also, if the diva decides to focus on the ball doesn't give a shit because the ball can give himself like what like 1400 extra health or something stupid. Can roll off, go and grab a mega, come right back. Um,
So the
it's like a good matchup for the ball. Better than the Winston.
so you want to use
And
the
still
adaptive shields
enables.
like reactively once you're kind of already have been chunked down, I guess, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely like not a pre because it's not something you don't really want to use preemptively. It's something you want to use while you're in the enemy team.
Mm,
Once they giving you attention and resources.
right.
Because otherwise, if you pop it and then they don't shoot you, what is the point in popping that cooldown? Save it for another time.
Yeah.
But yes, it's quite interesting because you can see ball players who play the hero because he's meta, and ball heroes play the hero because they're mentally ill. Um, you have like half the ball
Between
players will
between
be
your two
doing
tank
like
players, which one is which?
um both, both.
Both are both.
Um, yeah, both, both. They both play because they're mentally ill, but because they just develop like Kanata will be like before and in the middle of like a tournament day will just be like, I'm just gonna spend an hour rolling around, and that's what she does. She'll just be rolling around a map, just a random map on NA ping, just doing like just practicing her text and stuff. And I don't know. It feels like every week they bring up a ball tech that has apparently existed since the dawn of time that
Is
I've
that
never
like
heard
a
of.
is that a practice method that like all Wrecking Ball mains do, or is that something that Kanata has invented?
I think a lot of the higher level ball players do actually just spend a lot of time practicing those mechanics. They for some
Yeah.
reason they get a kick out of it. It's just like how a different type of mental illness, aim training, except it's with ball players. I'm mentally ill as well. It's okay. Um, there's a lot of mental illness and all yes, but we're mentally ill together and we're happy. Mm,
That's beautiful. I love that
mm.
sentiment. I really do. There's like two more teams I want to talk about. Well, one kind of a pair. So in the first couple of tournaments, right, you've kind of had sort of a big three, the sort of big three teams that we've talked about already. And then that fourth spot, or in one case, I think the third place spot, has kind of flipped back and forth between Faeble and Inarizaki. So my question, and I'd like all of you to kind of give your thought on this. So obviously there's roster moves. We know, I imagine Faeble are likely to have a pretty similar roster moving forward. They tend to kind of have the same core. Inarizaki maybe a little bit less so. Maybe they'll have Persona, maybe they won't. Persona is, I feel like it's just kind of the ultimate mercenary of calling all heroes at this point. But between those two teams, which do you think is more likely to kind of maybe take the next step forward? Molly, you wanna take a crack at that?
Yeah. I think we can look at this through two lenses. Faeble is a team that has really high highs and really low lows. It just depends on what the tournament is, what the meta is, what the roster situation turns out to be. Faeble has a lot more change going on internally, which is then kind of revealed externally in their performances. So we'll have events where they don't even qualify for playoffs. We have events where they place third and they make it all the way to lower finals. So it honestly depends, and it's very hard for me to put faith in that team with so many unknowns. We know that they have potential, and they very well can perform at a highest level. There just seems to be something that is missing in these past couple of events that they haven't quite been able to recover. So Miner 2, they're definitely the team I'm going to have my eye the most on in terms of, are they going to show up or are they non-existent kind of deal. Inarizaki, on the other hand, is a complete opposite situation. They are very consistent in how they perform, always in the top 4, top 5 sort of placing. Ever since they kind of had their little kind of coming out, we're here to stay in LCQ and made a decent run in champs back in February, they've been around and have remained incredibly strong across that. I don't think they have quite the same amount of star power as some of our top 3 teams. And I don't think it's down to one person. They are have great synergy all around. But again, I think they don't have the same level of experience. They don't have the same level of like just high pressure situations to necessarily perform at the same spot as those top 3 teams. But every time I see them, they get better and better. And if I had to pick between the two, the safest option would be for Inarizaki. I think that they still can punch up to at least a 4th place spot. And depending what shakes out with the whole Valentine thing, we may see them even higher.
Rachel?
I definitely think Inarizaki is the stronger team. With more potential. I mean, don't wanna brag, I have beat Faeble. I have not beaten Inarizaki. I think that says it all, really. No, but seriously, I think I just look at the player quality on Inarizaki quite a lot higher. Big up Krobus. You know, my EU rep. Good to see her out there. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say.
Yeah.
I mean, Faeble. Again, I think this could be the same for any team, but Faeble did seem to crumble under the pressure we put them on when we just decided that like to just ball all over them.
Do you feel like you're kind of like a little bit of a gatekeeper in the sense of like if a team struggles to adapt to like what all YASS is doing, it's kind of indicative of like maybe how high their ceiling is?
Yeah, I guess so. That's actually, especially in Swiss. We're way stronger in Swiss than we are in playoff brackets, because in Swiss, because in playoff, we just kind of like, we get shit on in the first match. We go into lower bracket. We have like a game that is super winnable. We go 2-1 up, and then we lose the next 2 maps in it. Like we get our balls flattened. I guess our dick stepped on, just crushed, gone. It's like free bottom surgery in a way. It's just brutal. I don't know. We might do it to ourselves. The Andromeda team that we lost to, your team, Moxie, like last time, definitely did feel like the stronger team than fucking goddamn Yippee. I'm so mad that we lost I'm actually so fuming that we lost the Yippee in that bottom bracket game. But
yeah.
But like Dorado, we as soon as we just got in our own head slightly about like, oh, we can't choke again, and we go to Dorado and we're like, it's our dive map, we can play ball well, and all of a sudden we're not stabilizing after getting the advantage, and we're just blundering into the same fucking 4-man nade every time. It's like, guys, come on, let's get it together. Like we got absolutely pooed on. We deserved to lose that one. I still think we should have beaten UP, but the Andromeda team, they definitely surprised us with how disciplined they were by the end of that like bottom bracket series. That was not fun to go through, but I do respect the level of play that they pulled out.
Yeah, good insight. Yeah, and then Moxie, if you want to just take a quick crack at my little...
Oh, the Inarizaki and Faeble. I think the way that I look at it is that Inarizaki have found their identity, and Faeble is still looking for theirs. Like, Inarizaki know that they're building their team around Persona, and that Persona is the carry, and that can be really, really good when Persona, like, pops off. But if Persona isn't able to, like, find that pop-off moment, or if meta moves away from heroes that Persona is comfortable on,
or is
then
not
it can be
on
looking...
the team.
Or is not on the team. It can look, like, extremely dicey. And then Faeble are still, like, looking for that identity. They're looking for something to anchor them, and I think that speaks to, like, why they're inconsistent. Because they don't have something to anchor around, so that when things like start to go wrong, they have all of these different solutions that they could potentially come up with instead of just this one thing that they can stick to in the middle of the storm.
Yeah, I feel like Avery should be that player for them, and I think sometimes
sure.
they are, but it's not necessarily consistent.
If it's a Sigma meta, then Avery 100% is that anchor, because, like, going back to the discussion of who is the best Sigma, in Calling All Heroes, I would definitely say it's between, like, Hitori and Avery. For me, with Avery coming out just a little bit ahead in terms of just accretion percentage. I've watched Avery streams and seen, like, 75% accuracy on accretion in one Flashpoint map.
That's kind of
which
insane, yeah.
Is absolutely insane. But I think, like, if Faeble are able to find, like, that anchor, then the inconsistent issues that they have will not go away entirely, but they'll definitely lessen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why absolutely is, like, my go-to just word that I say when I want to sort of end a segment. I need to come up with a wider variety of words.
Indubitably.
And I see, you can pull that off with your accent, but I don't think I can.
That sounds like
so
a
you
tongue
say
twister.
that, but all of my stream are trying to just gaslight people into thinking that I'm Australian. So apparently I don't always sound British.
That's interesting.
Okay.
So the last thing I want to talk about, Moxie, is something with your team, and I feel like it's difficult to kind of tell a cogent story with Andromeda Astraeus because and I should, like, cards on the table, I do some social media stuff for that team, but they've kind of, like, I feel like they've iterated their roster so many times, it's, like, kind of hard to tell a consistent story. But one of the pieces that stayed the whole time is Kjersti. And okay, we need to talk about this. So Moxie, what was your reaction when you found out that your flex support was going to shock herself with a shock collar every time she died in playoffs?
I asked her, please don't do it. I was like, please make it known that I am not telling you to do this. I have no part in any of this whatsoever. She was like, here, I give you the button, like, you can shock me. She
wanted to give you the button?
She wanted to give me the button. She was like,
God.
here, I have control over it, and I have not done it once. I treat my players responsibly, and I will have that on record.
Oh,
yeah, that sounds like something Lori would have done on Boston Uprising back in. That's like, okay, because here's my thought, right? What I thought was the funniest part of this is that she felt the need to, and, like, I'm saying this all with, like, so much love. She's great. I hung out with her in Dallas, like, great, lovely person. Is that she felt the need to ask the tournament administration for permission.
The DM.
Which, like, my thought is, like, I don't really see why that would be prohibited.
I think it was because she was streaming. She was streaming her POV, and I think she wanted just to make sure, because obviously, like, it is a little bit, like, potentially dangerous.
Right.
So she wanted to get, like, the all okay of, like, hey, I'm putting this on stream. This is going to be associated with Calling All Heroes. Is this okay to be associated with the competition? I just lost it at the fact that the admin wished her luck at the end of the message.
Because, like, let me look at, for whatever it's worth, Astraeus did place probably the best they had with the shock collar.
Oh no, you're not gonna do this, are you?
No. No. Why?
I'm not.
This is not indicative of the team's performance. What probably helped the team's performance is that we actually had experience with the role swap, because obviously, so the last time that we competed, we had so many different players having to swap roles because our flex support actually got declined in terms of being able to be eligible, and we find this out like 2 days before the actual competition.
Yeah.
So as a result, for the entire weekend, we had to rotate between them. We tried like phone on flex support. We tried KJ on flex support. We tried one of our tank players on flex support.
Yeah,
and then on DPS with phone like pivoting over to the tank. And it was just really, really difficult because like we practiced all of these different like synergies and positions and cohesions, and that all just like went out of the window because suddenly everyone was on different roles entirely.
Yeah.
And the communication structure just got entirely overhauled with like under 24 hours for everyone to be able to adjust. And then thankfully we had enough time to be able to adjust, and KJ actually found that she enjoyed being on the team and playing from a flex support role as opposed to a DPS role, because it meant that she got to focus more on macro and being able to direct the team on like game sense as opposed to just having to keep up the DPS duels and kill everything.
Yeah, it definitely fits her kind of, she's very analytical kind of.
She's very smart. We do one-on-ones and we'll go for like 2 hours of just me and her going through one map. Like we looked at a Samoa VOD and we were there for 2 hours. Just 2 rounds. Just going through every single little micro detail, and it's incredibly enjoyable to get to do that with her.
Yeah. I should clarify, I was not seriously suggesting that more players should adopt the shock collar strategy. Just for legal purposes, I feel like I need to
we need that in subtitles at the bottom of this.
This is not an endorsement of shocking yourself. However, no, I'm kidding.
No.
I just think it's just like it's funny. It's like it's you know, it's a, and the funny thing is this is now like that this is like the second thing that she's done that she's blown up for.
Yes, the vial.
The vial was awesome. Like that genuinely became like my I was like pointing out.
Wait,
people.
The vial?
Oh, you don't. Okay.
She went to Dallas and she brought an estrogen vial with her, and she got everyone to sign it. She met.
I saw that.
It got to the point where like I was basically going around with her and I was basically pointing out famous or significant people in the Overwatch scene. I was like, oh look, there's like Albert, and Tasmo. Like, what was funny was that it started with her just getting it signed by like women players, calling all heroes players, and then it eventually just became everybody. Like Rack Attack signed it, Dante signed it, Tasmo signed it. It was
Oh, you could not see the label anymore.
No, I was
by the
like,
time that she'd finished, it was just signature after signature after signature, just stacked on top of each other. It was crazy.
At a certain point, I was like, I don't even like. Can you even use this for your injections at this point? Like, has the ink seeped into the chemical compound? Like, I got worried. It was so but that was genuinely like my favorite subplot of DreamHack, because it just it got so big so quickly. It was delightful. Yeah. Shout out KJ for sure.
Yeah, we love KJ.
That we do. So before we wrap up, I want each of y'all to give me, so I think like there's definitely a clear stratification between like the kind of top 2 or 3 teams and then the rest of the pack, but I want y'all to, and I'll also chip in one, to just give me like a player that you think could really break out the second half of the year and maybe kind of play their way onto one of those top teams, or really kind of make a big impact.
Okay, I'm gonna cheat a little bit because we've already mentioned Hitori. But I think like one player who's probably going to be able to break out, and if Hitori like succeeds better, I think is also going to be able to get impacted by this. HQ broke.
Yep.
I think like Hitori being incredibly flexible and getting known for all of these other heroes is really, really good, because HQ, in my opinion, a little bit biased because, the contenders and getting to see HK back in like 2022 playing for Kryix, I always remember like the Genji and Mei, and getting to see that come back full force with either just the Mei for the brawl or the Genji with the dive or with the Jonker Queen. I think the hero pool in 2024 and as meta moves forward is just going to be able to benefit HK more and more.
Yeah. Rachel?
Gosh, I really hate to do this. No, I don't. I've got to guess up my own team again.
Go for it.
I just got to like. I think Kanata is just gonna. Every time we play against a team, they'll say like how good our tank player was, and she'll be like, "Oh, I fucked it up. Oh, guys, I'm sorry. I could have done." I mean, well, the enemy team is like, "Oh my god, your ball player is so good." I think she is insane. She's gonna carry us in this tournament, and I think she deserves way more recognition, and I hope she gets it. I think she's definitely skilled enough to do it. One tournament already, like, we've got a lot of people like complimenting her. I think it's she's got a only up for her.
Molly?
Oh, this one's always tough for me because I feel like there's just so many people. I'm kind of gonna go off someone who I didn't really pay too much attention to in Major 2 that really came out to surprise me. And based on that, I think are gonna do even better. I'm looking at Inarizaki's Krobus. Oh my gosh, the impact that this singular player had on the outcome of fights, on the outcome of maps, especially as a support, is ridiculous. And partnering Krobus up with an Inarizaki who continues to build themselves to be stronger. Like, I think if Inarizaki do well, it's going to be because Krobus is doing well.
Molly, do you know Krobus's past?
I know Krobus has been around in like Contenders, Uprising Academy.
I think it's funny that that
Krobus.
Because she's sort of coming back now.
So she's coming back, but yeah,
I didn't.
I wasn't in Overwatch esports at that point. But yeah, I definitely like after we had that cast, I remember it was a Dorado. Krobus got like a 5-person nade, and I'm like, who the heck is this? So I pull up Wikipedia afterwards, and I'm like, wow, they've been around for a while. Mm-hmm. So I mean, even if you're coming back and with that much of a splash on a return, like this is just gonna be great things. So I'm watching you, Krobus. You're gonna be great.
Yeah, I want to actually bring up another Inarizaki player from Major 2. I think a lot of attention goes onto Persona, and rightfully so. But I was pretty impressed by their other DPS player who, I think on Wikipedia it says Chloe. I think her IGN at points was like Misun or like
Oh yes, Misun.
Yeah, Misun.
Yeah, Misun. Is that how it's pronounced? Interesting. Okay.
I thought it was like Misun. I've been saying it wrong this whole time. I'm so sorry.
But yeah, I was impressed by her Tracer. Not really a player I'd like ever heard of before. But I was also a little bit confused. But once I realized who I was watching, yeah, I was really impressed by Misun's Tracer. I think, like, especially if Inarizaki is able to retain Persona, which I think Persona posted an LFT, so like who knows where the mercenary is going to go next. But I say mercenary, like, it seems like Persona goes from like Inarizaki to another team, back to Inarizaki, back to a different team. It's like but yeah, Chloe definitely somebody that I'm going to be keeping my eye on moving forward. Well, we've been going for a while. Thank y'all for sticking with me here. Yeah, Calling All Heroes Minor 2 kicks off on the 7th of September, right? And we will all be watching. I'm sure Rachel will see you in the server, Moxie and TinyShiny will see you on the microphone, and I'm sure I'll be yapping on Twitter about it also. But yeah, thank y'all for joining us here today with Kryix.
One more thing.
Yeah.
One more thing. Jada will kill me if I don't take advantage of this opportunity.
Yes.
Go to oryeah.biz for I think the only you can get a gay flag instead of a national flag if you want. Go to oryeah.biz for the only Calling All Hero team jerseys, I think.
Yeah.
There we go.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely delightful. That's actually so great. Because I looked at the jersey purchase page and it's like you type in the nationality flag. If you wanted, like, for that, did you just type in lesbian where it said flag?
Yeah, I said like lesbian pride.
And it's like, what country are you from? Lesbian.
Yeah, well, I'm not very proud of how the UK acts towards queer people.
Yeah,
So
no, that's really fair.
mm.
No, that's awesome though. Like, I love that. That's
And the
actually
print quality is super high. Yeah,
Matches your chair.
it does.
yeah, it does.
It even kind of matches your headset. Do
Does
you
it?
wear?
I guess so. Like,
The white and do you wear the jersey when you play ever?
yeah. Sometimes,
That's cool.
sometimes I can't be bothered. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I need to feel like I'm part of the team. It's yeah, it's great.
Nice. Yeah. Love that. Shout out. Oh yeah, building some really I looked at their whole merch store. They've got some really cute stuff.
Oh, Jay is very proud of that. She's always like coming to us with like new ideas. Like the have you seen the just a cool boy looking for a hot babe
Yes.
t-shirt?
Yeah.
Oh, it's
She
great.
was
It makes no sense to anybody who has no idea what
Yeah.
yeah.
It's the most
crazy.
iconic backline in all of Contenders EMEO.
rest in peace.
We love them so.
They're not dead. Abs just is playing in Collegiate now.
Yeah. Campe's just got even more divorced dad vibes now. It's
I
fine.
still can't believe that Oh Yeah got as their replacement flex support a former Genji one trick that had changed over to be a flex support, not like a Kiriko one trick, but like that's sort of his main hero. It's just so on brand for you guys to be like, who's your new flex support? Yeah, he was a Genji one trick in 2017. Like, we love it.
Yeah. I'm sure there's also like 7 other like Swedish Junkrat like one tricks that they've got in the back pocket somewhere. It's, like got a
Guys just
factory
gonna roll
producing
swap.
When is Ayas gonna get a Swedish Junkrat one trick?
them. We have a British Torb Junk 2 trick, you know, that's kind of close.
Yeah, but they're not Swedish, you know, it's like it's different.
Well, you know what?
Well,
Maybe if we get Dong to marry one of the Swedish players. We send them over. I'm sure in a few years they'll be legally Swedish. It's a work in progress, okay? It's a work in progress.
It's like the strategy. If we need to get Gushui in NA, who's gonna marry him so he can get American citizenship? That's
Oh, dear.
absolutely great. All right. Thank y'all for joining us here today.